This one is heavy, but incredibly important. We're going to be diving into a Reddit thread from the advice subreddit. Um, and basically, it's about a father, Jollyride2666, who's pouring his heart out after he lost one of his twin babies, Henry.
Yeah, you know what strikes me about this one? It goes beyond just giving advice. You really see the space for shared grief and understanding, which is powerful, really powerful.
It is. You can feel the emotion in his words. Like, he describes life since Henry's passing as, quote, trying to pick up fine sand.
Mm.
It's powerful, and place it in a bucket while it slips through my fingers. It's such a powerful image, trying to grasp and cope with such a huge loss.
It is, and the community's response is incredible. Hundreds of people chime in offering support, advice, and a lot of them are sharing their own experiences with loss. A virtual shoulder to cry on.
Absolutely. It really shows how, even in the digital age, that human connection can be such a lifeline, especially when you're dealing with grief. So just to give everybody context,
Yep.
Jollyride2666, he lost his son shortly after birth, kidney complications,
Ah.
and he actually held Henry as he passed away.
Oh, wow. That experience is so profound. And that likely plays a huge role in the pain that he's expressing. He
Definitely.
even mentions struggling to accept his son's death, especially the fact that he died in his arms.
It's heartbreaking. And to add to that, he's dealing with his own grief, but he's also supporting his wife, who is also grieving, and they have a surviving daughter, so he's carrying a lot.
He is. He mentions trying therapy, but hasn't found it helpful yet.
Right.
And he's turning to alcohol to numb the pain, as he says. And a lot of the commenters express concern about this, which is understandable.
Yeah. I mean, it is understandable to seek comfort wherever you can find it,
Yeah.
especially in such intense pain. But it's so important to find healthy coping mechanisms that
Right.
will actually support healing, right?
Right.
And that's where the community advice comes in. There's a huge emphasis on seeking professional help, particularly from grief specialists, therapists, support groups.
You know, it's interesting. They don't just say, go to therapy. There are several commenters that specifically recommend specialists in prolonged grief disorder,
Okay.
recognizing that his grief might fall under that category. Others suggest EMDR therapy, which can be helpful for processing trauma.
Right. It's like targeted advice based on his specific situation.
Exactly. Like
And
so.
it's not just a generic seek help. It's here are the specific types of help that might benefit you most.
Right.
And then alongside that, there's also a lot of encouragement to be patient with himself. Grief has no timeline.
Right.
And a lot of people acknowledge that acceptance may not even be possible.
Right.
But learning to live with that loss is key.
Yeah. What I found really moving were the comments from people who have experienced similar losses. They offer words of comfort, understanding, and hope, reminding Jolly Ride 2666 that he's not alone in this pain.
Yeah, there's one commenter, MRCMGL, who lost her son to stillbirth. And she talks about finding solace and focusing on her surviving daughter and recycling her heartache into love for her living child. It's such a beautiful way to describe channeling that grief into something positive. And it's amazing how much sharing these experiences can help people. It creates that sense of connection.
Oh, absolutely. Validation. Like, you're not alone in this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's another commenter, Grandma Bear 707, who lost her son 18 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how she and her husband chose to honor his memory by living their best lives and finding things to be grateful for.
That's beautiful. It speaks to the idea that healing doesn't necessarily mean forgetting or getting over it.
Right.
It's about finding ways to integrate that experience into your life and move forward with love and purpose.
Absolutely.
And there's even a specific suggestion for Jolly Ride 2666 to connect with other fathers who have lost children.
Yeah, that's so important. Finding that support system, finding people who really understand what you're going through can be invaluable, especially with something as sensitive as grief. Being able to connect with others who have walked a similar path can make all the difference.
Oh, yeah. It makes me think about the unique challenges that men often face when they're grieving. Society kind of expects them to be strong and stoic,
Right.
and that can make it hard for them to express their emotions and seek the support they need. So this thread really highlights how important it is to create those spaces
Yeah,
where men feel comfortable opening up about their grief.
for sure. And beyond professional help, there are so many suggestions in this thread for everyday coping mechanisms. Things like expressing grief openly, whether it's through crying or talking about it, engaging in activities that bring you joy. Some even suggest focusing on your surviving child,
Right.
finding ways to channel that love and energy into something positive.
Absolutely. And there's a strong emphasis on self-care too.
Yeah.
Staying hydrated, exercising, finding solace in your faith or spirituality. Um, these things might seem small, but they can have a huge impact on your mental and emotional well-being,
Right? Yeah.
especially during times of stress and grief.
It's like they always say, put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
And there's this really beautiful suggestion in here to consider having a ceremony or creating a small altar to commemorate Henry.
Oh, wow.
It's like a tangible way to honor his memory and
Mm.
keep him present in their lives.
I love that. Rituals and symbols can be so powerful. In the grieving process, it can provide a sense of structure, comfort, and connection to the person who's passed away.
Yeah.
It's a way to create a space for remembrance and healing.
And of course, we can't ignore the recurring theme of Jolly Ride 2666's increased alcohol use. It's a tough topic, but the commenters address it with compassion and concern. They acknowledge his pain while emphasizing how important it is to find healthier ways to cope.
Yeah. There's a lot of concern that it'll hinder his healing,
Yeah.
potentially create more problems for him and his family.
Right.
Some suggest seeking help through support groups, specifically for alcohol addiction, while others advise just reducing his intake, like to pre-loss levels. But regardless of the approach, what's important is recognizing that relying on substances to numb the pain is rarely a sustainable solution.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, though.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you want to validate his pain and how he's coping, but you also need to address the potential harm that could come from that coping mechanism. The thread really shows how you can have those difficult conversations, with empathy and understanding.
Yeah, it does. This whole thread, from Jolly Ride 2666's initial post to the community's response, it's just this powerful look into the complexities of grief and the many ways people navigate this experience. It also reveals, I think, some crucial insights about how we can better support one another through loss.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there's just no right or wrong way to grieve.
Yeah.
It's a deeply personal journey. And what works for one person, might not work for another.
Right.
But what stays the same is the importance of just seeking that support, whether it's professional help, connecting with others who understand, or engaging in those practices that nurture your well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And while the pain of loss may never fully disappear, finding meaning and healing, even joy in life after loss is possible.
It is.
This thread is a testament to that.
It is. It really is. And, that support can come from unexpected places.
Yeah.
Like an online forum filled with strangers who just offer, the listening ear and words of comfort really speaks to the power of just, human connection and empathy.
It does, even in the digital age.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for you? If you're listening to this and you're grieving, you are not alone.
Right.
And if you know someone who's struggling with loss, remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is just your presence.
Yeah. Just being there to listen without judgment can make a world of difference. Encourage them to seek professional help if they need it, and remind them that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. And, if you're specifically supporting a grieving father, keep in mind that men often grieve differently.
They do.
They might not express their emotions as openly, but that doesn't mean they're not hurting. And encourage them to find healthy outlets for their grief, whether it's talking to a therapist, joining a support group, even just spending time in nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
The key is just to create that space for them to process their emotions in a way that feels authentic to them.
Yeah.
This whole thread is a reminder that grief is a journey, not a destination. It's a process that takes time, support, and a whole lot of self-compassion.
It really is. And while the pain of loss may never fully disappear, it is possible to find meaning, healing, even joy in life after loss. This thread, it's a raw and honest look into the human experience of grief.
Yeah.
And it offers, I think, a glimmer of hope for those who are navigating their own paths through darkness.
It really does. It leaves us with a lot to think about. How can we just create a more compassionate and supportive world for those who are grieving? How can we break down the stigmas around grief, especially for men? And how can we ensure that everyone has access to the resources and support they need to heal?
These are all important questions, and I hope this deep dive has provided you with some valuable insights and maybe even a sense of comfort, knowing that you're not alone in this.
Absolutely. And if you found this conversation helpful, we encourage you to share it with others who might benefit from it.
Please do.
Let's continue the conversation about grief and loss, and work together to create a world where healing and hope are always within reach.